Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen Lynam. I'm a civil engineer and I work for the Office of Government Procurement in the Construction Policy Unit. I suppose our role in public works procurement is to develop the policies around how public works projects are designed, developed, tendered and delivered. And now, as we head into the BIM sphere, it's how these things are maintained also. So, delivering BIM requirements for public works contracts. This is I suppose a delivery I've been trying to get across the line for about 4 years now. But I do think at the moment the construction sector is in the right space to start the implementation of this process. It's not something that could be done overnight. We heard Tony talk earlier on in his previous presentation. They started in 2012 and they're only now realising the benefits that BIM is going to bring to his industry, both now and to drive it forward to the next level, to be the best at what he does. I suppose that's a key message for anybody that's getting involved in the BIM realm. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to lose a lot of willpower at certain stages, but ultimately, when you get it right, you're going to realise all the benefits it has to bring. I suppose just to go through the presentation today, it'll be a brief introduction to the public works contracts, public sector for BIM implementation strategy, where does BIM start for public works projects, what the client's role is, and what opportunities are there for the Irish construction sector, which not only includes public works, it's all projects. We want BIM to be universal for everybody. I suppose public works infrastructure procurement, it's governed by the Capital Works Management Framework using public works contracts. There's 11 contracts. Some people would say there's 10, but one of them is a framework, but it's still a contract. Our objective for the adoption of BIM is to develop high quality information for the entire life cycle of the project, not just for procurement. It's both in design analysis, making sure that your deliveries meet the goals for the client. It also makes sure that the procurement documentation that's used is of sufficient standard to give you an appropriate quality outturn on your procurement process. And then obviously then developed into information that allows a contractor to take it and deliver it on site. Following on from that, then the next stage of, I suppose, the CWMF will be a stage 6 where we are going to have to deal with asset life cycle management. And that's going to got to do with carbon footprint, life cycle of your building, life cycle cost analysis, all of those good things that BIM can help manage in a very systematic way. There's two aspects to public sector BIM implementation. First aspect is imposing standards. We all know and are aware of many different types of standards and interpretations of standards across the industry. But we have a collective opportunity here to look at these standards and approach them in a consistent manner, no matter what side of the fence you fall on, whether you're public or private sector, or whether you're a self-builder. Maybe you want to develop a digital way of developing your business. But we want a consistent approach from everybody. And to do that, we're imposing the standards through the 1st of January next year through the Capital Works Management Framework. And that announcement was made by Minister Donoghue and Smith on the 4th of July this year. There always was an intention to implement the BIM mandate, but as I said earlier, the industry just wasn't ready for it. It would have caused a lot of problems if we had jumped the gun. So BIM requirements will be introduced to the CWMF, as I said, starting next year, and it's going to start with the higher value projects, projects that are 100 million plus in value. The reason we've taken this approach is we believe that the skill set is there in the higher value organisations, the tier 1 contractors, the higher end construction professionals. They have already seen what benefits BIM can bring to the industry, and they're now adapting them as standard processes within their larger organisations. The idea would be that that information and knowledge will help flow down to the smaller SMEs. And over time, in 4 years' time, we'll be down to the very small projects. And don't forget as well, BIM is scalable. It's not just one big set of rules that runs everything. it comes down to what the client demands and what industry can deliver. And we have to be realistic about that over the next 4 years. If we start looking for 6, 7, 80 BIM, from the get-go, and you don't understand levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you're never going to get there. You just make so many mistakes. So when you're developing and being involved in these projects, make sure you understand what the BIM demand is for the project. And that BIM demand should reflect the type of project you're doing, the complexity or the simplicity. And again, your BIM level should be appropriate. So the ISO 19650 series standards are going to be adopted through the CWMF, and they will set the minimum information requirements for public works contracts. Second aspect then is supporting the public bodies in the adoption of BIM. Now, what I'm harping on a lot about public bodies and whatnot, I do sit on the NSAI BIM Mirror Group, which is a collaboration between public sector and private sector. And that entire group of people are, I suppose, their concentration is on delivering BIM in the Irish construction sector. We don't want a difference between public works and private works as to how BIM is delivered. The approach must be consistent so everybody can benefit from the knowledge that's developed over the government mandate. Hopefully that'll help the private sector, and also we can learn from the private sector. Again, we're looking at things like contractual amendments, protocols. We have those under consideration team. Our legal team are looking into it at the moment. Development of minimum standards. And again, we've partnered up with Build Digital and NSAI. It's not just the OGP saying this. I mean, we're here to help. We're here to try and push this in a very manageable fashion. But if the industry don't start grinding with us, it's going to be a difficult start for everybody. And I would say to anybody, adopt these standards now, learn from them now, before it comes to January where you're learning when you're at school. There's no point in trying to reinvent something when you get there. I mean, if you've looked at something and you understand it and you're familiar with it, it becomes far more easier to deploy. And again, there'll be training modules through Build Digital, and also I was at a presentation here earlier on, a lot of really good training information in relation to that. And then again, BIM certification. One of the big issues we're going to face with larger projects for people in procurement is how are you going to qualify your consultancy team to deliver this? What makes them better at BIM than the next guy? So again, we need to look at some sort of certification process for companies that will help develop those sort of capabilities within public procurers. I suppose the first aspect of the implementation strategy. So anyone that's familiar with the ISO standards, there are 6 of them. Part 6 is still under development. It's due to be published shortly. But from a public works point of view, parts 1, 2, and 3 will be a requirement, and part 2, the Irish Annex, will be a requirement. Very, very important thing to make sure you understand. There's a lot of consultancies out there at the moment saying, oh, well, we use the UK ISO 19650 Part 2. Why isn't that good enough? Because Ireland, as a nation, we have developed an annex in conjunction with our own industry, and we feel we have an annex that works in this country, so we will use it, and that will be a requirement. Part 4, again, the information exchange, that's going to be a requirement. Part 5 will be optional, and the reason Part 5 is optional, it's a security-minded approach to project development. So obviously in public works procurement, we have to look at things like prisons, guard stations, anything got to do with the Department of Defence. So obviously, that's where Part 5 can control access and management to information in relation to that project. That's why it's optional. And again, then Part 6 is health and safety. We have numerous health and safety acts and everything in this country. They are obviously going to be brought in under your health and safety management procedures through ISO 19650, so you can streamline those. Once you have them set up once, you should be able to use them on a multitude of projects. It's very straightforward, and again, it's going to be a requirement when it's published. I suppose also in supporting the adoption of BIM for public bodies, ourselves in collaboration with Build Digital are developing BIM templates for use with public works contracts. They're going to be available in November 2023. Those documents are going to be, I suppose, working examples once they're issued. So we will develop them further over time and add or take away from them based on lessons we learn, things that work well, things that don't work well. And the templates that we're looking at producing are the exchange information requirements, organizational information requirements, asset information models, and project information requirements. The reason these 4 documents have been targeted is without organizational backing, you won't have BIM. So you can't drive BIM from a designer's point of view. You can't drive BIM from a consultancy point of view, and you can't drive it from a contractor's point of view. It has to be driven by the client. If the client doesn't support the BIM process, you don't have a BIM process. At best, you may have a collaborative 3D design development. That would be about it. So the organizational information requirements for me is the key document, and that ensures that people that are involved in the delivery of any project have the resources and the backing of their management team in order to deliver it. And that is a key thing people need to take away. Those resources are not something you can deliver overnight. You can't employ people overnight in the public sector, so it takes time. So you guys that are involved in these projects should be pushing back to your management now saying, where are our resources? BIM is coming in January 2024. Who's going to take responsibility for information management? Where's our common data environment? How do we get people access to the common data environment and keep our own servers secure? So you're looking at cloud-based solutions. And again, these are the key things that need to be driven back to management from people that are here in the industry that are involved in delivering BIM. I suppose the strategy itself is 3 phases. These phases are kind of, I broke them down to kind of line up with the stages that are in the CWMF procurement process. So stage 1 is inception, and stage 3 is tender action. In between you have design development, you have tender documentation development. So that's going to be delivered. That's where we're starting with the BIM implementation, with those 3 stages for the first 12 months on projects over 100 million. At the end of that 12 months, we're going to have contract involvement at that stage, contractor involvement at that stage. So we'll start developing the process for the contractor to be able to deliver in 12 months from the initiation date. But it's going to mean that clients and the design team for the first 12 months are going to be dealing with all of the BIM issues in relation to their project. And again, when I say it's mandatory for this to happen, if public sector bodies out there want to take a step further and feel they're ready to take that next step, we won't say no to them, and we can talk to them and learn lessons from what they've taken from their project development. And the second phase then is the construction of the project to the handover. And traditionally in public works projects, once the handover was done, that's the project done, we all move on to the next project. But we have had, I suppose, an intervention with environmental considerations now. Carbon is a big thing, and we are going to have to develop a stage 6 for the public works procurement procedures. That stage 6 is going to deal with asset management, life cycle management, carbon in use, the entire management of the life cycle of the facility, from demolition all the way to reinventing it again. So I mean that's a big ask. At the moment we have developed an ICMS system that will also become mandatory with public works procurement projects. It's a world recognized international cost management standard. It has around 19 different costing templates which are also deal with carbon cost for various types of projects. I think 2 of them are for building projects and there's 17 for civil, depending on the type of civil works you're doing. So we're actually working on those templates at the moment for use in the public procurement sector. I'm sure they'll be used in the private sector as well, because they don't exist out there at the moment. They're a very good way of managing your environmental considerations on your project. So as I said, what does all that mean? It means us mapping information requirements from stages 1 to 3, establishing the level of information need for those stages, determining responsibility matrices for consultants. So no matter which consultant you are, we would hope now that the new conditions of engagement will have a detailed responsibility matrix in there for what information you are responsible to deliver and at what time that deliverable has to happen in the project. It's a little departure from the fixed price lump sums that we have at the moment. And again, we do realise that BIM comes at a price. You know, it's not a free add-on tool. It does come at a price. But again, I'll refer back to what Tony said earlier on. You won't realise those benefits until you see the end product and how much more fluent it becomes, less challenged, easier delivery. You know, it takes away all those headaches by defining how the project is to be delivered in the first instance. And again, they're going to be delivered on €100 million projects plus in January 2024. Phase B then, again, this is stage 4 and 5 for the €100 million projects. That's going to kick in January 25. The issues in relation to how that's done are very similar to phase A, and again, we have them listed down there. My good feeling is some of those asks on the left-hand side may change between now and then, and that's going to be determined on what we learn when we go forward. Because BIM is a new technology for everybody. It's not something to be afraid of. I think it's something you need to embrace, and you're going to learn how good it is when you have it in your arms and you're cradling it and you're working it. You can massage it then to suit the requirements that you need for your organisation. And lastly then, the phase C, which is the new stage. So the reporting requirements for asset operators, the review process that's supposed to happen in the CWMF at the moment, it doesn't. Once a project's finished, it says the keys are handed over and everybody does a legger onto the next project. You know, that's typically what happens. Nobody wants to know about it unless there's a problem. And then making recommendations for the improvements in the delivery of stages 1 to 5. And again, that's a key learning with BIM. Like, BIM just doesn't stop when the project, you know, when the ribbon is cut. BIM extends for the entire life of the project. And if you don't feed back from your experience in delivering the project into the initial stages, you'll never get those little things right that annoy you every time a project comes up. And I'm sure we all have them. There are issues that consistently happen, and we all give out about them and moan and groan. But you have an opportunity now through the project life cycle to be able to document those, to inform the people that are starting the next project as to what worked well, what didn't work well, what could you do to make the thing better. And that comes through good collaboration. I suppose this is the timeline we're running for the 48 months. So the first task is projects in excess of 100 million. That's a 12-month implementation process. After 12 months, that's it. There's no excuses. We're taking the oars off you and we're going to push the boat out. You know, you've got to figure it out from there if you don't engage in the first 12 months. Task 2 then, from 12 months on, projects in excess of 20 million. That's a big drop down from 100 million project, 100 million euro projects. It's a big drop. So the message we want to get to industry is this is coming all the way down to projects of less than 1 million euros. So you now need to get on the wagon and you need to start considering how your organisations are going to contribute to the BIM journey that's going to be a requirement. So if you're a private contractor in the private sector and you say, I'll wait till it comes around, guys, you won't get past the pre-qualification stage. You just won't. So you need to engage now. Train up your staff, you know, have people of an appropriate level within your organisation to be able to manage and deliver the tasks that your construction firm or team can deliver to the industry. And again, cascading all the way down there, we're at 136, that's when we'll be commencing the low-level projects. At that stage, I would expect we'll have a pretty good understanding of how well we're doing with regard to BIM implementation. My own feeling would be it'll be very positive. I think the Irish people in general, you know, when we get the bit between our teeth, we go for it. You know, and I think that's the message. You look at that inspirational presentation Tony gave. You know, another Midlands man here, very proud, know that steel company well, worked in civil engineering for a long time, have been using them for a long time. Super success story, but driven by the vision, digital was the way forward. And again, these are just the, suppose, unveiling the BIM implementation timeline. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. It's very straightforward. There's no bells or whistles on it. These are happening on these dates. And as I said, I've explained the task months 1 to 12 on the bottom line there. But contractor and supply chain is on the bottom line. So that's when the contractors are really going to have to start to smarten up. I'd imagine, Tony, you'll be well in ahead of them based on the developments you've made within your own company already. But again, you know, that's the type of initiative we need to see. Design teams and clients are on the top line. If you're not prepared, that lower guys on the bottom side of that are not going to be able to give you what you want. You need to get prepared now, and particularly on the client side of things. So where does BIM start? BIM commences with the client's need to plan, authorize, develop, and deliver assets. Understanding the information they need to deliver their projects that they are involved with. That is the key message. And also to provide the resources to evolve the asset is critical. If I take the example of a client who decides BIM is going to come in a box, and they'd say, yeah, we'll pay for the BIM, no problem. We'll get in a consultancy team to do all our BIM, and we let the tender go out. And I have talked to several people in the industry where that has happened in the private sector and in the public sector. It's not common to either, not uncommon to either. And the results they've got was a very disjointed and irate design team, because nobody knew what deliverable the client was expecting. As far as the client was concerned, we specified BIM. You did, but you didn't specify what you wanted in BIM. And they're client requirements. So you need to understand the information that you need to deliver your asset, and you need to know how that information has to be returned to you so you can use it to make decisions based around similar assets for future projects. And that's where the data management piece comes in. That's information management. You need to have somebody that understands the information management process. You need to have somebody that's able to understand how the communication between design team happens, how information is relayed from the client through the employer's representative to the design team when they get to site. So you need somebody to fulfill that role that's independent of the design phase. So again, like an assigned certifier, that's where I would see the role of an information manager fitting in. Also, you have the obligations as a client to deliver a common data environment, as I said earlier, and you must appoint the information manager. Initially, I suppose, over the phases that we've talked about earlier, we would be reasonably happy with that being given to a consultancy company to do, but for larger organizations, we will want to see bums on seats when it comes to information management. We want to see information managers appointed within those organizations. And that's going to be a new role within the construction team. So it does come as a cost. And again, we need to work on how we can develop, I suppose, a panel of people that could be utilised to deploy within the civil service to fulfil that role. And again, ourselves in the OGP, we've had a couple of BIM awareness series seminars. These are available online at the moment for any civil or public servant through the One Learning portal on the Commercial Skills Academy's website in the OGP. I am trying to get them made available to everybody because I think those seminars give a good grounding on the topics that you see there. Asset management is the first one, so understanding your asset, how do you build an asset management profile, that type of stuff, very sort of valuable on-the-ground real information. And then the second one was on the information manager, what their role, function is, difficulties they have setting them up. It's well worth looking. There's I think there's 3 speakers in the first class that was given and 3 in the second. The next one is on IT resources and technology. That's due on the 10th of the 10th next month. And again, that's for civil and public servants only, but I will try and get it up on the OGP's website to be available to the wider public. So BIM is going to start by the two aspects I previously talked about. That's where it is, it's coming, it's hard-lined, it's black and white, there's no frills or greys on it, and there is no exemptions from it. So remember that. You fail to deploy your these standards on a project, your NDP delivery is going to suffer. So if you're working for a large organisation, you're going to create mayhem when it comes to capital budgets and delivery. This needs to be considered now, if not already done. And obviously the supporting clients piece is something that's going to happen over the next 48 months during the whole delivery process. We will be running more seminars and involved in more talks as that deployment rolls out. So the client's role to assign the information management role. So they're kind of saying, okay, well, we need to employ somebody. What skills do they need to have? They need to have technical skills and they need to have non-technical skills. Anybody that's in a management or an information management role needs to be able to be a good collaborator, a good communicator. But in relation to BIM, they need to have, the little extra caveat is they have to know the construction process. There's no point in sending somebody in there to be an information manager that's no idea how the construction process works. It just becomes too siloed. So understanding the need and the skills that that person has to have are absolutely critical. And again, they're just a list of some of the bits and pieces I put together as to what I feel they would need. We are going to work on a role profile for that with the Public Appointment Service to try and develop a panel of information managers that can be deployed within the civil service pretty quickly rather than having everyone do their own procurement process for additional resources. Opportunities for the Irish construction sector, very quickly. I could ask Tony to come back up here again and just take a look at them. That's the opportunities that it's going to bring to this sector. You're going to develop a new approach to asset acquisition, new skills in project design, project delivery, asset management, a new career paths for information management, and a unified approach for public and private sector projects. And it's going to bring the construction centre into a digital domain. I mean, if that's not enough to drive what we're trying to achieve here, I don't know what is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve.